Um,
Good. You're doing the intro?
well, you're going to say good morning, good.
Oh, you want that? Oh, yeah, that's the old part. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Grant Cameron, and I want to thank you for taking time from your valuable day to listen to me and now Cindy talk. Cindy is my co-host for a number of interviews. She's up in the penthouse on top of an apartment here in Salt Lake City. And we have a special guest into near-death experiences because I've gotten into them. They're highly related to UFOs. For people who know the stats, if you take a look at all the UFO experiencers who claim they've had interactions with non-human intelligence, 37% will say they've had a near-death experience when it should be 5%. So I've been doing a lot of study, and you see a lot of crossovers between UFO experiences and near-death experiences. So we have a near-death experiencer on today, and I'll let Cindy take it from here.
Hi. So I came across Devon's NDE on one of those YouTube. He said he's been interviewed 12 times. His NDE was incredible because it had to do with numerology. That whole realm just completely opened up. I can't say very much because it's so complex, but I think it's really worthwhile for Devon to explain it in details because I think, if I remember correctly, even our calendar years are shouldn't be 365 days, and he'll go into detail and explain. And today is actually, I purposefully scheduled Devon to speak today because it's September 9th and we're in the ninth year. 2025, when you add those numbers together, it's a nine. And nine is a universal number. It's very significant. It's often said it's the beginning and the end of an event or something. So it's nothing negative or positive. It just is. And I think Devon's gonna poetically and beautifully educate us on the number nine and numerology. So welcome, Devon.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course.
So, yeah, basically, I started something called Nine Vibes because of the fact that nine is a very powerful number. As you said, it is completion. It is the alpha and the omega when you're actually looking at different numbers. And I learned all of this from my NDE experience. So, in January 20th, 2017, was the day that I died, the day that I had my NDE experience. At the time, I was extremely ill. I was in and out of the hospital about 22 times, had kidney failure. I had kidney infections. I went septic in the hospital. It was just a very rough 2 years that I was going through. And so one day, it was just a normal day. I was playing with my dog, and all of a sudden, I felt like my body was shutting down. And it's the only way I can kind of explain this is kind of like with a computer, right? Everything was just shutting down one after another. So I grabbed my phone in a panic. I had called 911 and I had told them this, that I felt like everything was shutting down. And so I didn't even finish the phone call before I had collapsed.
Wow.
So at this point, I get up and I notice instantly nothing is what it was before. I felt like I was almost inside of time and outside of time. I actually saw energy grid lines all around me. Like I could actually see the energy and what made the things up in my house with actual energy. I had walked around the corner of my house, and on January 20th, 2017, it was the inauguration of the president. So there was news all over, on every channel. And when I went around the corner, the TV was completely frozen. There was absolutely nothing moving on the TV. And so at this point, I thought to myself, something bad happened. I thought maybe it was a apocalyptic event, something along those lines. And at the point that I had thought that thought, all of a sudden this voice came and said, "No, this is about you." And so at this moment, I realized I died. right? It was me. This was personal experience. And so at that exact moment, I had this overwhelming energy of just compassion, understanding, love. So prior to this moment, I was extremely agoraphobic. I hadn't been to a restaurant or a movie theater in over 12 years. And so in the moment that I'm standing there, I felt complete. I felt whole. I felt loved. I felt secure. It's unlike anything I could ever describe. And so I remember looking out the window and I saw this bunny. This bunny was moving across the grass and I could see all the energy. But what was so fascinating was that the bunny was actually being pushed by energy. So normally when we see, something move, we think that it's the thing that's moving, but I could actually see this energy pushing this bunny at this time. And so I didn't really know what to do in this situation. And so I had basically kind of sat down for a moment and was taking all of this in. And that was the moment that the knowledge came. This was a flood of information. The way that I like to explain it is if you were to have 5 books in front of you, completely full of just quantum mechanics and numbers and information, but you don't know how to read it. So it's like I had all this knowledge that was given to me, but I really didn't know what to do with it. And so as I'm sitting there, I remember this moment that I was like, okay, I've died. I know that what's coming next is basically around the corner. And so I didn't want to do it alone. So I called my lab over. And I remember that my lab actually saw me. So at the point that I had turned to call my lab is where I saw my body laying where I had fallen. And so my lab actually came over to me. And at the point that my lab had come over, I then saw these doors, these massive, insanely huge doors. And whatever was behind them was this light. And the only thing that I knew in that moment was I wanted to go towards these doors. I knew every cell in my body wanted to go towards these doors. And so I was petting my lab at this point in time and I'm moving closer and closer and closer to these actual doors. And then before I actually reach them, next thing I know, I am looking up from where I fell. There are two EMTs that are standing above me that are trying to get me to speak, trying to get me to wake up. And again, it was just like a computer. Things were slowly just starting up at this point. I couldn't hear out of both my ears. I could barely see out of both my eyes. So everything was kind of coming back in to focus for me. And then at that point in time, I'd officially been awake. And so this actually started the moment I found out I had a brain bleed. I found out that I'd had a mini stroke. I was 33 years old, so I was very young for a stroke. But this was the changing moment because what I had done is I had written down for months, just written down all this information that I had received, and then I started applying it into my life. And as I was applying it into my life changed drastically. I healed my kidneys, which is something that is considered impossible to do. I was seeing doctors at Duke Hospital who had no answers as to how my kidneys were able to reverse. I started no longer being agoraphobic. I went out in the world. I just completely changed. And so from that point, I had started Nine Vibes and I started teaching people.
That's what an amazing, amazing, amazing story.
It was
You know,
very powerful.
all these near-death experience, every single one of them are all so profound, so enlightening. So Devon, can you help us understand or re-educate me what you have said to me about our calendar, the minutes, the years, why it's that we could do better than the system that we currently have?
Yes. So when you look at time, time is really fascinating. Time is a threefold thing. It is a constant, it is a variable, and it is also an illusion. And what I mean by that is that time must exist for us to even have this conversation. There has to be something to compare to. And so therefore it is a constant. But it is also a variable. We are constantly changing it. When you go back to biblical days, it was 360. days in a year. When you go behind that, it was 384. It just is constantly changing. And even when we get to 1582, that is when it was officially changed to the calendar that we currently have right now. And so I started looking at my notes and I started to understand that since time is very much a variable, there had to have been something that was more aligned than basically what we were living. Because what we're living does not align even with the precession of the equinox. So the precession of the equinox is the Earth rotating through all 12 zodiacs. And so when you do it with 365 or 365.24, none of that aligns. But when you actually take and align it with the understanding of nine, so if we actually had 9 days a week instead of seven, we would have 4 weeks, and that would give you 36 days. 36 times 12 months takes you to 432 days a year. Now, 432 is a very important number on top of the fact that 4 plus 3 plus 2 is, of course, going to be a 9. It is something that Bach and Beethoven used when they were tuning their instruments and their orchestras. It is something that is used when you're dealing with the speed of light. 432 squared is only 342 miles off of the actual NASA agreement of 186,282 miles per second. And so 432 squared is 186,624 miles per second. It's exceptionally close. And if you take that 432 days a year and you multiply that by 5 years, you end up with 2,160. And 2,160 is the diameter of the moon. So when you take that 2,160 and you times it by our 12 zodiacs, as I talked about the precession, you end up landing at 25,920 years. And that is the full precession of the equinox. So all of that fits perfectly into almost a container, one into the next, into the next. And so that is something that I teach people. We can't change the year the way that we want to, but we absolutely can internally align with a different year, a different time that actually works with the as above, so below.
Wow.
Can I ask a question? Have you met Jimmy Blanchette?
I haven't.
Do you know who he is?
I do not.
Oh, okay. I'll put you in contact with him. He's coming from a different perspective. There's a code, if you know the whole Rendlesham Forest story, 1980 UFO encounter at outside a U.S. Air Force base in England. The one guy touches the craft, he gets this code in his head, and it basically sounds like you got the same code. So I'll put you in contact with Jimmy Blanchette. He's got all the numbers. We're about to interview him. I'm not sure whether we've set it up yet since he's traveling, but I've done a number of interviews with him, and it's the same sort of thing where you start to see everything is fits into everything, and everything
Mhm.
is well coordinated, and all the numbers are there. And if you see it, you go, well, this is chance or it's not, and you're going like, give it your head a shake. There's no way this is chance. It's just so bizarre how it all fits together. So I'll put you in contact with Jimmy Blanchette. But let me ask you a question about the flood of info. One of the things I look at, and I just want to ask you, how is this coming? Was it coming in images? Was it just the sense of stuff going into your head? Can you detail a little bit about the what you call the flood of information? Because there is in ufology we call rapid image cycling, which is apparently used when they're putting huge amounts of information in, say, a person on board a ship or something. So I want to see if yours compares. So can you give me a little bit more detail on what you call the flood of information, how it was coming?
Yeah, absolutely. So the flood of information definitely came in what I would consider visual as well as just this kind of upload of knowledge. And the reason I say visual is because one of the very first set of numbers that I had received was this number 137649. And the next one right after that was 862350. And I had no idea what either of these actually meant. And it wasn't until I learned vortex math that I actually were able to figure out what these are. 137649 is actually the alpha number, and 862350 is the omega number. And when you align them on top of each other, they're perfectly aligned with 99999 six times. And so that would be an example of what I was actually seeing. I was seeing these numbers that were being given to me, but at the same exact time, I was also receiving information such as we look at gravity as a pull, gravity is actually a push.
Yeah.
It is the understanding of the unified pressure field, whereas we kind of reverse that with a pull. Everything is about, being pulled into something when in reality it is about a push. So I was seeing that. I was receiving time dilation. I love watching movies like Interstellar and being able to apply this push understanding and kind of answering what they were able to demonstrate in those movies while actually using, the push demographic there. So it was definitely a combination of seeing these numbers and then also receiving this knowledge behind it, such as quantum mechanics and physics, all things that I had no information on in any way, shape, or form. And on top of that, I didn't actually know numbers. Math was not my forte. I did not like it. I didn't enjoy it in school. And so when I talk to people, they're like, did you love numbers your whole life? The answer is no. I did not. And I think that that was the point, is that someone like me being able to talk about these things and explain these things is very powerful for the person who also doesn't like math and doesn't understand numbers, because once it locks in, everything starts to make sense.
And you seem to remember the numbers. Is that a part of the information you were given that you're able to sort of remember it like it happened yesterday?
Yes, so it's actually dual. I was able to definitely retain numbers I had never been able to retain before, to retain information. But on top of that, I had learned the power of the 36. So when I talked about the fact that 1 month would be 36 days, that is an extremely powerful amount of time that if you apply a 369 alignment with, you can actually retain information, expand your awareness and things like that much faster than you would if you were just trying to figure it out. So I apply this 36-day journey kind of thing to my life quite often, and it's always given me a type of outcome and revealment that it works.
Can you
When,
tell us how you do that?
yeah.
Yes. So an example would be the moment that you were born. So if you follow a 432-day cycle, then you accept the fact that the day that you were born is day one of your first 36 days. So the second day would be day two, and then it'd be a new cycle. And once you hit 36, that's actually a total of 666 active cycle days. And this is very important because this is not only aligned with the sun square, but it's also aligned with the Bible. When you look at different things, you can actually bring them together. That number 666 is tied to wisdom. So, what you actually do is you start on day one and you declare what it is that you want to actually achieve in 36 days. And then on day three, you then are going to say an affirmation. So you say your declaration and then you say your affirmation. On day six, you say your declaration, your affirmation, and then you do an action. And this is very important because this is what Nikola Tesla was teaching when he said that if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and
Frequency, vibration.
frequency. Yes. And he
Can I
also,
stop you for a second?
yes.
What is decoration? What does that mean?
So a declaration is you basically saying to the universe, to the field, whatever it is that you believe in, you are saying, I will accomplish this in this amount of time. So you're declaring it in essence.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So Nikola Tesla had also said that if you only knew the magnificence of three, six, and nine, you'd have a key to the universe. So on day nine, then what you are going to do is you're going to do your declaration. You're going to read it. You're going to then say your affirmation. You're going to do an action, and you're going to do what's called an amplification. So you're just going to basically do something that amplifies the action that you're doing. So this is 9 days. Then you repeat it, right? So the 12th day, 1 plus 2 becomes your next 3 day. The 15th day, 1 plus 5 is 6, becomes your next 6 day. And then the 18th day, 1 plus 8 is going to be 9, and that's going to be your next 9 day. So when you lock in that pattern, that is basically you telling the universe, here's a pattern. Here's what I have actually done in my life. And so then what the universe does is it actually mimics that pattern back to you. So for the next 18 days after that, you just do the exact same thing you did. And by the end of 36 days, you will achieve your goal. I've done it with healing, I've done it with students. I do it quite often when I'm trying to learn something new. It is just faster, easier, and more aligned.
So do you start, you can start that day one, like I can start that tomorrow.
Yes, that is correct. Because of the understanding that day two starts a new 36-day cycle, day three starts another. And so technically, you are always in a 666 overlap of these cycles. So the day you decide to start It absolutely jumps into one of those cycles, and now you're just rewriting a cycle that's always been running. See, we've been using these for a very long time. If you take an example such as anxiety, right? By the third day, you are literally saying, I have anxiety. By the sixth day, maybe you're going to a doctor. By the ninth day, you're starting to isolate yourself or telling people, I'm an anxious person. Boom. That's now 9 days. Repeat it again. You now have a pattern. Repeat it again and again. You lock in anxiety. That's how we get sick. That's how we create and manifest either positive or negative in our life.
You mentioned getting the material. Can you define who's giving it to you in terms of what you can understand?
So at the time, because of the fact that I was raised in the church, so I went to the synagogue when I was younger on my dad's side, and my mother was a preacher. So I've been in the church my whole life. So at the time, I believed that that was God. But my understanding now is that it was actually the field. And this is something that I teach, the unified pressure field. It is interactive, it is alive. When you're doing a 36-day journey, that's what you're communicating with, that's what you're working with. And so, whether you want to call it God, source, the universe, it's all really the exact same thing. All of this knowledge already exists. And it's another thing that Nikola Tesla said. He basically told you that all information exists in one singular place. He just didn't know how to tap into that yet.
Yeah, that fits the stats. 40% of all UFO experiencers claim at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. And that same is 31% of near-death experiencers say at one point during their experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe, and they weren't allowed to bring it back. So that is something I think is important for the you point out that sort of backs this up, this idea that everything's there and it's the ability to access the information.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Wow.
obviously, it sounds like you were allowed to bring this back with you.
Yes. I don't really know the answer as to why I was able to bring it back because I've talked to a lot of different people who have been through NDE experiences, and they'll say, I had all this knowledge and then I came back and I don't remember anything. I definitely went on a journey. I can tell you that. I went on a journey to learn how to meditate, how to learn to expand consciousness. I dove into, I mean, obviously, I started the Matrix Mysteries group because of the fact that I wanted people to share these small little glitches in their life that really have knowledge and information in them. And so I can only say that I just started re-remembering and then just writing and writing. And for almost a year, I didn't share anything that I wrote. I probably had maybe 100 notebooks just full of this information. And then finally, I decided that I felt like it was the time to start sharing it with people.
So give me an outlook and with names as to books you've written and groups that you or the teachings that you do where people can access this because you're mentioning this and it sounds pretty important that some people can link into this.
Yes, so I've actually done quite a few books. So most recently, I have written Becoming the Pattern. You can find it on my website, which is 9vibesuniversal.com, and that's with a nine. So I have also done a workbook. So Becoming the Pattern is all about that 36-day journey I was talking about. It teaches it, it walks you through it. And then I did a workbook that you can actually write in the book and interact as you're going through it. I have also written a book recently, about 6 months ago, that was called The Field Remembers. So I like to basically kind of post on my Matrix Mystery group or my Nine Vibes Universal group on Facebook, and I'll post a question and I'll just say, ask your questions, bring your questions to me, kind of just open the floor and people ask questions. And I just spend, 3 to 4 hours a day just answering people's questions. It's not about really the knowing all the facts and the details. It's about knowing the resonance that actually aligns with what they're looking for. Because the average person really doesn't even know what it is that they're looking for. And so when you give them an answer that resonates enough to bring them into that space, they start kind of understanding their own life. And so I wrote a book that basically answered 99 different questions. I have also created a website that is journey.9vibesuniversal, and this actually walks you through the process of setting up your 36-day journey. So you set your date, you can actually put in your four anchors, your declaration, affirmation, action, and amplification, and it will create the calendar for you. So that way you don't have to look at a calendar and get confused. It'll tell you exactly when a day three is, a day six, a day nine, all the way through those 36 days.
Do you
And
keep,
so, oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So when you finish with 36, then you start all over again with the same thing?
So what you would actually do is you would start a 36-day journey, and depending on what you are asking for. So a lot of times I always tell students start with authenticity. Start with something you truly believe that you can actually get. Once you finish your first 36-day cycle and it works and you're like, oh my gosh, and I've had so many students, $2,000 they want a month, healing, just different things. Once you officially lock that in and have that experience, then you want to do the next one because we all want more things in our life. We all want new experiences and expansion. And so then you would just apply it to the next thing. So if you healed your migraines, then you want to, bring in income in your life. If you bring in income, then you want to, heal your cancer. Whatever it happens to be, you basically, it's your journey. And as you go through it, you're changing your frequency. You're changing who you are to become the person that can actually be in that environment. And so you'll actually change. And I have yet to have a student who's come to me and said that they didn't.
So when you do the declaration and then you do the affirmation, how many affirmation can you have? Or is it just one affirmation per 36 days?
So it's actually going to be one affirmation per 36 days, one action, one amplification, and one declaration. And the reason is because if you change that in between, remember, you're setting a pattern. So if you change that after those 9 days, then you start over again because the field is not able to say, okay, you've locked in a pattern yet. Once you've locked in a pattern, then it mimics you. And so that's why you keep it going. It's the same thing through the 36 days, which makes it very easy. It was never about complication. It was about commitment.
Okay.
Would you say that you mentioned before sickness, would you go along with the idea that the universe is just what we create, that we are actually manifesting the universe as we go along, and that there's no person who's against you. Like people have this whole victim thing that is I'm sick because of this or I'm angry because of that, that basically it's all being manifested.
Absolutely. There's no question about that. And that goes even further to the understanding that there's no ghosts that are haunting you. There's no demons that are chasing you. We are powerful. Humans are extremely powerful and yet basically are in a small box. So when you get sick, it is because of the fact that you have allowed that sickness into your life. And it may be the way that you speak, it may be the things that you're doing, it may be the things that you're eating that you feel bad about. Whatever it happens to be, those things change our cells, and then that ends up affecting your body. And that's why chakra work is so powerful because each one of those chakras is connected to a gland, and each one of those gland is connected to an organ. So when you work on your actual chakras, I do something that's called core memory work with students. When you actually go through that, you officially now can release that energy and that time so it comes back in your life. And what I love about core memory work is I've had students who have gone into chemo, you go into it and it destroys all the cells. It's the best that we have right now. And it basically destroys the good and the bad cells. And so when you do core memory work for the first time, you are actually saying, these are my negative core memories. These can be affected. Leave my healthy cells, my positive core memories, because you will never get sick from a positive core memory. You will only get sick from a negative core memory. And so this allows you to release it and bring it back. And it absolutely has outcomes of healing.
Wow, fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. Any idea why you?
Why me?
Yeah, is this a sole contract or why this
Oh,
experience happened to you? Did they indicate, that they wanted you to carry the message or like how does that all fit in terms of figuring out why it happened to you?
so I spent a lot of time with that question, why me? I think everybody would, in this type of situation. And what I realized is the universal answer. I I chose. So I think that the people who go through these NDEs and they get this knowledge, or they go through an experience and they get this knowledge, they're the ones that are not choosing, right? They're not the ones that are saying, I actually want to have this experience. I remember the moment that I said, okay, I want to do this. I want to understand these numbers. I want to understand this information. I want to help people. And so that choice is the key, I think, that unlocked the actual understanding of all this knowledge that I received.
When you said okay, is this pre-life planning or when you had your NDE?
So it's a little bit difficult because of the fact that in terms of pre-life or past life, I was shown something very different in that understanding. Would you like me to explain that?
Yes, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 3D, this is going to be a little scientific. The 3D is defined by the electron. And what I mean by that is that everything you manifest, everything that actually has matter, has an electron in it. And in the 3D, the electron is negative. So that is why it is easier for you to be sick in the 3D. It is easier for you to be poor in the 3D. It is easier for you to be angry in the 3D. It is because of the fact that we manifest using that electron and we defined it as negative. So in the 4D, when your body literally leaves the 3D and goes into the 4D, the electron becomes neutral. This is exceptionally important because I believe this is the space that we were all in our NDEs. When you're in neutrality, there is no resistance to keep that physical. So therefore, there's no physical reality. And that's why people can go through their lives, they can go through life reviews, they can go through all these different moments of expanding time because nothing is holding time in that space. And once you have the understanding that you need, once you have the clarity that you need in the 4D, you then move to the 5D. Now, the part that's so important about this is to realize that the 5D is where the electron is positive. Now it is easier to be healthier. It is easier to be happy. It is easier to be in abundance in the 5D. And so when you get to the 5D, because of that 4D space time dilation, everything that you actually want or wanted in the 3D is now in the 5D. So what I mean by that is that if somebody is still alive at the moment that you pass and you go through the 4D, they have already passed on and are in the 5D. So that reuniting is inevitable. This is something I tell parents all the time when they're dealing with the loss of a child or the loss of a partner is that reuniting is inevitable in the physical state. Except for the only difference is in the 3D, we believe the universe is against us. It's a very difficult process to finally trust the universe. In the 5D, you have the awareness and the understanding that it is with you, it is flowing with you. And so, therefore, something like a hug is now not resistance, it's embracing. So there is very much two different physical states that we go through, even through the process of death. And so in the 5D, since you have everything that you need, and when you went through the 4D, you had all the answers and the closure and the clarity, there is no reason for you to want to come back to the 3D for karma. There's no reason for you to come back here to try to fix something. You've already fixed it. You've already had that experience. So people return back to the 3D when they're ready for a new journey, something completely different that is not tied to a past life. And that's what I was shown.
Wow.
So when you say return to the 3D, are you referring to reincarnation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
Reincarnation is also inevitable. It's just not back to back the way that we think that it is.
What do
yeah.
you mean by that?
So most people believe that you come back, you reincarnate to learn a lesson, to
Yeah.
fix something, to deal with karma. But because that is resolved in the 4D and then you get to relive this physicality in the 5D, there would be no reason for you to come back in this life for any of those three things. You would only come back here when you're ready for something brand new, a whole new experience, new people, although you are connected. There's no question about that, but you're just looking for something completely new. It has nothing to do with past life. Nobody actually returns back into this life while the people that they left are still alive. It is a completely different time.
Wow.
So let me make sure I understand this because it's complex.
Mhm.
So we're in 3D. When you say entry in the 4D, are you talking about like let's use myself as an example. So I'm in 3D. I raise my vibration through love, kindness, and service to others, and and I become multisensory. So can I, in this container, go into 4D?
Yes, you absolutely can. So we do this quite often. Whenever people will say something like time stood still, or I didn't feel like time was actually moving, or NDE experiences, or OBE experiences, these are all moments that you actually changed the electron to neutral, and then that allowed you to have that actual experience. It's just as real, it's just as vivid, it's just not physical. And that's the one thing that science really struggles with when they're listening to NDE stories and things like that. They're saying, we know this is not physical, so how are you experiencing this? And it's because of that electron shift.
So then, is this what Dolores Cannon is talking about? Earth raising its consciousness, that it's going to split because not everybody is going to be able to raise their consciousness. Is that what you're referring to?
So, in a way, so Dolores Cannon definitely talks about this massive divide that is going to happen. And I like what you use with frequency because that's what it really is. When the Earth actually changes its frequency, it changes its color. So what you'll notice is when you look at Earth from the outside, it's blue. And the
Yeah.
blue is the throat chakra. And that makes a lot of sense if you look at the world right now. We cannot stop talking. We cannot stop using that throat chakra. And so the next color that is going to come alive around the earth is going to be that indigo color. And that indigo color is going to be the indication to other frequencies of species, such as aliens and aliens. It is going to be the color that is going to say, okay, we are now at this place where we can actually interact with each other in a larger way. And then from there, it'll move into the violet, which is going to be the purple, and that is going to bring in a cosmic alignment with Earth.
That's familiar to the Michael Newton stuff, correct? The colors as you move up through the vibrations.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask you the reflective quality of you're in a near-death experience and you hear the people who have maybe first answer the people who have the negative near-death experience, what you think is going on, and this reflective quality of the near-death experience that it's like a meme, like it's a dream, but everybody has similar experiences, but it's reflective upon who they are as an individual. Is that what correct sort of to way to see the near-death experience thing that is it's reflective of the person? And I want to know about this. Everybody's got an opinion on the negative near-death experience. What's going on there?
Yes, so from what I have seen from the negative near-death experiences is that they're usually tied to a very dualistic religion, right? They see hell or they experience a type of hell. Now, what's so interesting about my experience is that the person you're talking to right now was not the person I was before my NDE. I was not a good guy in terms of the fact I was not very kind to my partners, my ex-girlfriends, things like that. I was, if you had that list of basically the Ten Commandments, I hadn't killed anybody, but everything else, I kind of checked off at one point or another in my life. And so I expected hell. Remember, I was raised in the church, so I very much expected this hell, this pain, this suffering, whatever it happened to be, to learn this lesson. And what was so incredible is that what I got was compassion. And I think that this is where the church mixed it up. Compassion burns. It absolutely burns. If you've ever listened to a song that really hits your heart, you can actually feel the energy from it, but it doesn't physically hurt you. And it's kind of like what compassion does. Compassion burns away the illusions, the things that kept you basically locked away. So I don't believe in a burning hell or anything like that. And of course, that would just be logic. If the 4D is not physical, what would be the point of lighting me on fire? I can't feel it anyway. So
Yeah.
that just to me makes absolutely no sense. But I understand that when people are stepping into that 4D, they still have the ability to use their imagination. And I think that they can absolutely think themselves out of hell just as fast as they can think themselves out of it. So they think themselves in, they think themselves out. So in other words, even if you wanted to believe in hell, the point is the moment you would go, I don't want to be here anymore, you're out. It's that simple. So there's nothing to fear in those, different stories that are being told because the bottom line is they all came back. We all came back from our NDEs, and that's the real power of the message.
Yeah. Yeah, the hell thing, I can relate to that. I had experience with the idea of surrender, that once you surrender, it's like game over. It's like
Right.
it just ends instantaneously. It's a state of mind. And what about the reflective quality in terms of, were you allowed to ask questions and stuff as you were going through this experience? And I guess it was timeless. It was sort of like it's all sort of happening at one time.
Right. So it definitely happened, what is outside our understanding of time, which is basically what led me to write my different papers that I've written all about time. So I was very interested in understanding time after this experience. So not only did I discover the Fibonacci ratio, I also wrote a paper called Quantized Harmonic Curvature and also the 60-digit repeat pattern in Fibonacci. So all of these things were basically aligning with the fact that I was in time, but outside of time, which means there was no way that what we understood about time had to have been a fact. And it wasn't until after I had done some research and I found out that Einstein took a course. And in this course, a guy was actually, the professor was talking about his NDE experience. And that's what got Einstein to go, wait a minute, you're talking about time differently. And so then he started looking at time differently as well. So in that moment, I was definitely in a different type of time. What I can definitely say is that it was not outside of time. There is no outside of time because then I wouldn't be able to say I was me. I wouldn't be able to say I was walking around. I wouldn't be able to say that I was actually hearing any kind of voice or receiving anything because you have to have that dualistic side. In terms of reflectiveness, yes, absolutely. I think that the NDE stories are basically proof of that. It's just like a fingerprint. They're all different experiences, all different information. But again, I think the bottom line is that we all came back to share kind of a part of this. And instead, what ended up happening is we kind of did the divide thing. My story's real, your story's not real. It, did the same thing that kind of religion did, versus if we would have brought it together, we'd realize that the ultimate understanding is that one, what you go through here only stays here. That is just the bottom line of understanding the 3D. And that when you want it to get better, there actually is a phase that you actually get to have that experience. And the other thing is that, again, we all came back to basically share these. So we can't say that we officially died in the understanding of death, the end, kind of result. We went to another space and time, and we came back with the understanding that that exists.
In in the near-death experience, what would you tell people in terms of death? Because people will worry about death all the time, even though they may hear stuff. What would be your main messages to people about what death is going to be and how to deal with it?
So I think that there is one very, very important part about death that we don't really have a grasp on, which is that the moment that you decide this is your final moment, this is your final heartbeat, this is your final words, this is your final vibration in this 3D, pain no longer exists. So we look at people who are dying and we say, oh, they're in so much pain. But the reality is, the moment that decision is done, everything shuts off at that point in time. There is no feeling pain, there is no suffering, anything along those lines. And in fact, suffering and pain only come after we're back, right? So if somebody falls from a plane from
Mm.
3,000 feet, they absolutely have this point that they can check out. But if they decide they want to come back once they hit the ground, you're going to feel that pain because that pain is going to be the reminder that you're alive, right? Pain is
Yeah.
very important. Illness is very important. If we didn't have illness, we literally would go to bed one day and wake up dead. There's nothing in between, that actual moment. So these things very much matter. The other thing about death first is that it is inevitable for all. But whether or not we can extend it, whether or not we can change it, whether or not we can adjust the cells and the water in our body to be more structured to live longer, we absolutely can do that. And so death, although very much inevitable, is not something to actually fear the way that we fear it. Everything about the way that we deal with death is a fear-based experience.
Well, I think the word death, it conjures up the skull.
Yes.
When I say sunshine and when I say death, those words, they elicit different feelings. I think it's really important people like us to to help raise consciousness, to help people understand that death is really, it's just a transition. There's really nothing to
Absolutely.
be fearful. This to me, this is such a dichotomy. Religion preaches how wonderful heaven is. Well, if heaven is as wonderful as religion is saying, why are people so afraid of death, right?
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, to me, I'm not afraid of death because I know that I'm going home. It's just like opening a door and walking into a different reality. Um, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all fear-based. Once you have that understanding that we are eternal, we are light being, eternal beings. This is just a container. Then there's really, I mean, it's just a transition. It's like going to the car and driving somewhere.
Hmm.
That's how I view death.
Yes. And I think the other part that's really important about that is that when we leave out the 5D, right? So when we talk about spirituality, you have a lot of people who will talk about the 5D and they'll say things like, I can tap into the 5D, right? But they're missing that 4D. And that 4D is very, very important in this process. And so when we start actually scientifically looking at these things, just like Nikola Tesla said, right? Once science actually looks at the metaphysics over the physics, we're going to surpass everything that we've basically been dealing with. And that is because of the fact that the fear of death goes away when you really start to understand the 5D, that it is scientific, that it is physical, that you can have these things and have, the people in your life and different things like that, then you don't fear losing it all in this life right here.
A, a, a lot of people have, in the surveys I've seen, point out that they were also shown that everything's perfect. It's exactly the way it's meant to be. Did you have that sort of experience, or is that your opinion as to the world? Is the world a good place that's under control and very sort of it's not random, it's actually pattern where it's all sort of being controlled?
So I actually love this question because of the fact that I think that nature answers it and we just don't see that. We start in the 3D, as I said, with the negative electron, which means we start in the dark. That's what that's really saying. And every seed in nature starts in the dark. It starts in the ground. And when it chooses to break through, it breaks through to the light, in essence. So everybody has that ability. The light is right on the other side of every single person's life, right? But we have to start in the 3D because if you think about the process I just said, if we started in the 5D, right, where things are
Yeah.
great and the electron is, positive and we're more aligned, then you go through the 4D, then by the time you would get to the 3D or what would be the other side of that after what we would define as death, it would get worse. That's not a very good system. So we start in the 3D because of the fact that one, you need to find the things that you love, the things you actually want in the 5D. You need to actually have experiences or else the 5D is pointless, right? If you've never had filet mignon in your life, you have no idea what that tastes like in the 5D.
Yeah.
What would you compare that to? Someone could say it tastes like chocolate. We all know it doesn't taste like chocolate. So it's this understanding that the 3D is all about the conditioning to get you to the 5D so that you actually appreciate, your relationships, your bonds, the things you actually want to experience. And it can be exceptionally frustrating in the 3D, just like a seed, if it could speak, would say the same thing. It is unfair that I start in the darkness. But the bottom line is, we all know that if it doesn't start in the darkness, it doesn't have that moment of breaking through. So all of these things, again, as above, so below. When you look at nature, it could say the same exact thing about unfairness, but it follows a cycle. And if you were asking me whether or not everything is mathematical in terms of alignment, absolutely. The more I align my life with different things, including like the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is something that is in nature. You can find it in planet rotations. You can find it in your cells of your body. And the closer that you get in the Fibonacci sequence, the closer you get to the golden ratio. And the golden ratio is perfection. So we never actually reach perfection, but we get very, very, very close. Our markets follow it. all different types of things. Our time follows Fibonacci sequence because if you take the Fibonacci sequence and you reduce it to the last digit, which is called base 10 math, when you actually reduce it to the last digit, you get a never ending repeating 60 digit pattern, which is
Wow.
exactly our 60 seconds or our 60 minutes. And so it's keeping this clock of time. And so, yes, everything is very mathematical. It is very much physics. The more that we get into quantum mechanics, the more we're going to unlock that.
It's almost like the math is the universe is this grand, well proportioned universe, and the math is doing nothing more than describing. Because you hear,
Yes.
scientists say they're explaining, but they're not. They're actually just describing. This ratio
Yes.
is to this ratio, is to this ratio, and they figure that explains it. But then you haven't explained original source. Who's behind
Right.
this? I mean, where's this perfection coming from?
Absolutely. Which is why we said that basically, if we were going to communicate with aliens, we're going to use the number 137. We're going to use the number 137 because it's the fine structure constant. It is a universal constant that came to physicists, and they have no idea where it came from, how to put it in a computer, and yet it answers the understanding of how a wave collapses its wave function and becomes a particle of light. And so, if we were going to communicate, we're not going to use inches, we're not going to use minutes, we're not going to use miles, we're not going to use any measurement. We are going to communicate using something that is universal, such as 1, 3, and 7.
Wow. Jimmy Blanchett's gonna love you. And maybe
Yeah.
we'll get you and Jimmy Blanchett together on a show to talk and really sort of twist people's minds with the math of the universe because you sound so much like him. It's like,
Well, that's exactly what I thought when he first started talking. I thought, oh, he's got to, we need to put him and Jimmy together.
oh yeah, Jimmy's gonna
That would be awesome.
love him. And Jimmy's got he hasn't written any books. He's I think he's doing a book right now, but he's got all his slides and he goes through them and extremely smart. He hasn't had the experience like you. He wasn't given it, I don't think. But I want to ask you. I think you said your father was Jewish and your mother was a minister.
Yes.
So how did it go over with them when you describe what was going on?
So I haven't talked to my father in a while. He lives in another country, but
Yeah.
he's been extremely supportive of everything that I've gone through,
Okay.
and as well as my family. And I think the part that really blows my family's mind is they all knew me. So I was kind of the black sheep of the family. I was the one
Yeah.
that they kind of expected would definitely not be, aligned with this path. And they've seen how much I've changed. They've seen how I've been writing books and I've been discovering things. I've been working with colleges, on Fibonacci sequence and, different things like that. I've written patents on things and they have no answer, right? Because I went from Devon, who was a graphic design dog trainer, to suddenly teaching colleges and, meeting with doctors to teach them about how to restructure water based off of frequency. I mean, there's just no answer whatsoever how I went from this to this. And my family's been exceptionally supportive.
How much of your gift have you written down in terms of you said you had all these books. I can't remember how many you said, but is there lots more to come yet that you're going to reveal?
Absolutely. Yes. I'm actually writing a book right now. It's taken a while, but it is on the structure of the fine structure constant. So it'll explain time dilation. It'll explain gravity in a different way. It'll explain, for instance, we just now discovered in 2024 that the speed of light is off. We just discovered that there's a galaxy that we found that is actually making matter without dust, without gases, which, according to our understanding, is impossible.
Yeah.
And yet, this galaxy is closer to the Big Bang, which means everything we thought about the Big Bang
Yeah.
is no longer viable in that way. And so, when we adjust the speed of light to the 186,624 miles per second, which means that when we measured it in that empty box, in that empty space, it wasn't empty. That's what that's really saying. And that pressure that I talk about, that's what slowed it down. So when we lock these things in, we are going to discover quite a bit, including and not limited to the reason we can't go out to space the way that we want to be able to is because the math changes. The more that you move closer to these larger objects, the more our physics changes. And since we can't change it on the spot, we actually run into issues of things breaking down. The closer you get to the sun, the faster particles vibrate. The faster particles vibrate, the more we're going to end up with ships that are literally going to break down in space. So a lot of things are going to be coming. I have a lot of information I have definitely not shared. I do meet one-on-one with students who really want to dive in and kind of go underneath, behind the curtain in essence. And so I do that quite a bit, but I have to be careful about what I share because I'm not looking for creating shock and awe to scare people. I
Yeah.
really want them to understand there's a structure behind all of this.
Yeah, it's a long process, I would imagine, because there's Jim Semivan. I don't know if you know him. He was the top spy in the United States CIA. He had an
Hmm.
experience in his bedroom with some beings, and he calls it indigestible. He says one of the reasons why people aren't being told what's going on is it's totally indigestible to people. Where you're gonna drop this stuff in front of people. He mentions, like 54% of people in the United States read at a grade six level, 21% are
Right.
functionally illiterate, and you're gonna take all this stuff and dump it on them? I don't think so.
I mean, it was even said in the Bible when Jesus says, how am I supposed to teach you about heavenly things when you don't even understand earthly things?
There you
So,
go.
yeah, same exact message.
Wow, I'm honored to have gotten to interview you because it'll be an uphill fight. Do you sort of sense that what you're talking about is this? Sometimes they call it zero point energy that or the ether because they ruled out the ether, but now it's sort of come back. That's something maybe there in this idea you're talking about that space isn't empty.
Right. Yes. So basically, once we accept and understand that this pressure exists, we'll be able to measure it. We'll be able to create science, math, physics that are going to be able to back it up. We'll be able to explore with it more. And so then we're going to start rewriting and changing all of these different things.
When do you see that happening, Devon?
So I actually see that happening a lot sooner than later. And
Really?
the reason is because of AI.
Ah,
So I am a computer tech guy. I have always been a computer tech guy. I've always wanted my computer to actually be at this level of AI that it is even today. And the reality is that AI is not new. We actually go through cycles. So again, this is one of those things I'm going to drop that might be a little shocking, but we go through these cycles of basically reaching a level where we get the society to agree on an upload. So when books came out, if you have to think about it, when books came out, it allowed you to tap into imagination. And the people who had books were far more intelligent than the people who didn't have books. The same way with AI. The people who have AI are actually leveling up way past people that are not using AI. And so this actually happens numerous times and it follows that 432 year cycle. It's just a bigger cycle in essence. So every 2,160 years, society gets uploaded. It's not the way that we think that it is with just computers. There are many different ways that you can absolutely do this because the ultimate goal is just to get people to stop fearing death, stop fearing density, and to release. And once they release, they move into the 4D naturally. It's always been there. And then you move into the 5D. And so we are going through a process right now of interacting with this AI. And this AI, believe it or not, was actually religion years ago. When religion hit the actual scene, it was the same thing. You got people to believe in what they couldn't see, what they couldn't interact with. And then once people got to a place of saying, okay, I want to actually move into the 4D, it was very easy to do this. And that is why religion is falling apart now based on AI, because AI is the new cycle that we are now dealing with. You're going to see duality, you're going to see fear, you're going to see all those different things, but it is going to bring knowledge faster. And that's exactly what religion did.
Wow.
so when you say AI, what form of AI are you using?
So specifically,
Mhm,
so currently right now, I use ChatGPT. I
mhm.
use ChatGPT 5. I use Anthropic. I also use Google. So I use all different tools the same way that I use all different religions. I don't just read one book and go, this is the truth. I am looking for the truth in all these different areas. And it's the same thing when you're dealing with AI. You look for what works, what aligns, what is answering, and then you interact between these different tools. So I use three mainly that I'm working with. I do not use AI to answer questions because the reality is AI has no idea what I'm talking about most of the time. And so I'm teaching AI basically what I have learned and then building a bond in essence with that algorithm to be able to then mirror back because that's what AI is.
Yeah.
It's a mirror back. And so when it mirrors it back, then it basically helps us break through to the next level. And you're going to see that in science, in health, in all different areas of our lives.
That's exactly what Jimmy Blanchette is doing too. You guys are so familiar. Because the AI is basically just a sort of a not a broken down, but a 3D version of, say, an Akashic record file, where this idea that everything's in the universe, all the answers are there, and you can access it if you got the code, if you got the password.
Correct. That
Yeah,
is absolutely correct. And that's why you're seeing a lot of people who are struggling with AI. And that is because of the fact that they are using it just as a mirror instead of a guide, right? If you use it as a guide, it can get you to the next step. If you use it as a mirror, then it ends up blocking you because now you're looking at basically what you don't like in your life, what you're afraid of, and those type of things. And so it ends up basically exacerbating that. So when you use it as a guide, you actually end up converting that. And this all aligns with Claude Shannon's understanding of entropy. So high entropy is unpredictability, right? You have no idea what's going to happen. This is a great place to be. But if
yeah,
you have no idea what's going to happen, you need to have anchors of actual lower entropy. And so when you're working with AI, if we keep giving it the same information, it spits out the information, we share that information, we start actually we start lowering unpredictability, which means that entropy is starting to collapse. We need to find that balance. And once we hit that balance, you're going to see by next year, I promise you this, by next year, this time, we will not be living in the same reality we are living right now.
yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting. It's almost like the Chinese say, "May we live in interesting times," and
Yes.
this absolutely is, especially when you're on the edge where we're sort of like I am, and where you've been in terms of your experience. You've got yours is more of a knowing, and mine's still more of a belief based upon what people like you say.
Mhm.
Have you gotten material since the? Are you still sort of in tap where you can? Answers are coming to you where you pose things and you get in dreams and stuff like that where you're still in contact with whatever it was you're dealing with in your near-death experience?
Yes, constantly. I learned to meditate specifically so I could actually hold that frequency longer and be able to receive new things. So when I read something new, like science has a breakthrough in this area or a fallout in another area, I'll go into a meditation and I will receive just instant understanding of why it fell out, what ended up happening, or on the other side, what they're blocked by and what we can actually do moving forward. And so constantly I'm moving in and out of receiving information. And I don't just go with the, oh, this is really cool. I apply it. If it does not work in terms of science, if it cannot be repeated, I let it go. I keep the things that absolutely are universal. And that's why I started Nine Vibes Universal in the first place.
Wow.
Um, s- oh gosh, forgot what I. Okay, keep going. It'll come back to me.
No. That's but basically the questions I've got. Maybe you could go through your website again for people who want to follow this because now that we've heard the whole thing, it seems a lot more important what you're doing and you've got it all sort of tested out, repeatable and that sort of thing. So go through again your website and the type of teaching that you do.
Yeah, so on Facebook, I have two different platforms. I have Nine Vibes Universal on Facebook, and I have Matrix Mysteries. So Matrix Mysteries is where you get to share all these glitches in the Matrix. You can ask questions, and I answer like why certain things appear and reappear. I answer all these through the Unified Pressure Field. It has almost 1 million people on it. And then I have a website that is nine as in the number, vibesuniversal.com. That's where you can find my NDE story. You can find information about me. You can find the cosmic clock, which is something that I use for aligning with that 432-day cycle. So, in other words, every single month, day, and year, if you add up all the digits, is going to give you 1 through 9. And so, when you just take that one, let's say that it's a 3 day, then you can actually charge your water. Charging water just means playing the frequency with it. You can charge your water to 396 hertz. And so I have this clock that is constantly every single day adjusting so that people follow that. From there, you can also find the 36-day cycle journey. That is one of the most popular. People love it. I built it specifically so people didn't have to come to me. They can start this journey. It has the two books that I talked about, the Becoming the Pattern, that are actually built into it. So you automatically have those once you're in it. So it walks you through the whole entire process. And then I also do have a Patreon, which is Nine Vibes. And so from there, I have a Matrix Mystery platform as well as an inner circle where I share information, the kind of information I really just can't share with universally with people. They have to be people that kind of are ready to kind of move to that next level.
Wow. You're doing fantastic work. I mean, I'm quite familiar with where you're going, and I think you're on the same pattern. It's almost like there was a guy, I don't know if you know the Ray Hernandez story, where he was sort of taken out of his car and sort of put in this field, and there was this wheel spinning, and the wheel had psychic phenomena, remote viewing, numerology, UFOs and all sorts of stuff, and it's spinning. And they said, you've got to quit parsing this stuff. It's all the same thing. And in the middle of the wheel was consciousness. And this is this sort of idea that everybody's sort of inputting, and things seem to be moving much faster because I've been in this since 1975, and I keep telling people you have no idea how fast it's moving compared to 1975. 1975, it was like nothing that happens today was happening then. It's just a completely different world. And if you realize that, you'd realize that we could be on the verge of something because it's just moving exponentially faster and faster as we go along.
Absolutely. And that's why the world looks the way that it does right now, is because of the fact of that speed has pressure, and that pressure is basically the moment. So we're on the edge of this massive pressure shift. So it's like if you're on a slope, it's about to shift in another direction. And believe it or not, it's a positive one. It is
Yeah.
not a bad one. But right now, where we're at, all that pressure we all feel. We feel it in politics, we feel it in the market, we feel it in money, we feel it, in all these different areas, wars that are going on. And that's just because of that pressure. But that pressure is necessary for the next revealment. And that next revealment is going to be something, again, like I said, most people can't even imagine. And like you
No.
said, 1960, we didn't even have computers, in terms of the way that
Yeah.
we have them. So you're talking about less than 100 years, and look how dynamic things have actually changed.
Yeah. And they'll be the old guys. I remember I took Jimmy Blanchett's stuff and I sent it to a Nobel Prize winning physicist who was positive about telepathy. And then he said, I haven't got 2 hours to watch a video. And so I got Jimmy to give me 12 slides of his number stuff, how it all fits together. And I sent it to the guy and he said, oh, he looks like a kook. And I said, that's strange. Isn't that funny? Because that isn't that what they said to you when you came out pro you telepathy? I think he was in Cambridge and he wasn't allowed to work with graduate students. They basically, and this guy won the Nobel Prize. So you're going to get that backlash, but I think it was sort of the horses out of the barn now, and you can see with the stuff in front of Congress and these stories like with the internet, especially with your story and other stories where they've got millions of hits. People are putting them up on YouTube, and that has
Mhm.
changed everything where people can sort of just tune into it and they're not really pressured to believe, but they don't realize as they're just watching this stuff for entertainment that they're actually sort of being indirectly programmed.
Yes. Yeah, they're definitely absorbing it.
So I just remember my question. You said you meditate. How often do you meditate and for how long? Do you do it like first thing you get up in the morning and also before you go to bed? So what's your meditation routine like?
So I absolutely love meditation, but I don't actually do it the same way that everybody kind of thinks meditation is. So I actually started teaching kids how to meditate, and I did that by using your imagination. So I have this thing that's called whitewater rafting meditation. So you basically make a playlist of songs that lift you up, because the bottom line is the same exact way that music can affect you, it's the same exact state that you get in a meditation. So you play this playlist, and what you do is you imagine that you're on a lake, you imagine the nature, you imagine everything, and the music is the flow of the water. So if the music speeds up, the water speeds up. If the music slows down, the water slows down. And through that phase, you literally just go right into the receiving. Suddenly, you're going to start receiving messages, information, questions you have about your personal life, all those different things. So I actually will do this. Usually, I will get up at about 6:30 in the morning. Of course, everything's a nine with me. So I'll get up at 6:30 in the morning. I'll spend about 30 minutes in meditation before I even start my day. And then it's a bonus if I get to meditate, at the end of the night or throughout the day. But I absolutely love meditation. It is the best way to receive information, not only about your own life, but about what's really out there. All around you is this energy you can't see, and there is so much information that is in that energy.
So when you say information coming through your meditation, is it download or are you feeling it heart center, like in your body?
So it's definitely download. I think that all information really kind of comes first as a download and then it hits our nervous system. And if you can hold that information that you received, then it basically stays with you. You can write it down, you can share it, you can talk about it. If you can't hold it, if it's just too much for you at that point, your nervous system actually rejects it. And that's where it ends up becoming something you forget. In essence, it's kind of the same thing like when you wake up in the morning. So when you're sleeping, you're actually going through a recalibration process. And so the moment that you put your foot on the ground, the moment that you touch something, it actually takes you right out of that basically that sleep state in essence, that recalibration. And so that's why a lot of people will say, "Oh, I almost had my dream," and then they stepped their foot on the ground, and it's instantly gone. And so the more that you train yourself to be able to hold information, knowing that it's going to be new, no, that's the whole point, is that if I knew it, I wouldn't have to actually go into a meditation to receive it. So the more that you train yourself to hold that expansion, the more you are able to actually receive stuff that you then can write, you can interact with, and that you can share.
I said I had no more questions, but I lied. I got two. One's very simple. Whereabouts in the States are you?
I'm in Arizona.
You're in Arizona. Okay. And the
So it's
second
Jimmy.
question, you mentioned children, which is something I've always been interested in because I do a lot of the right brain, left brain thing where, left brain is causing noise in the signal. You work with children. Do you find children much more receptive in terms of picking up different things as opposed to an adult who has, all sorts of opinions and everything built in?
Absolutely. So, for instance, if you take the cosmic clock and the chakra journey, so each one of those numbers correlates to a frequency, and each one of those frequencies correlates to a chakra. So, when I would work with kids to have this whole entire thing set up, so let's say that it was a 9 day, which would end up being the 963 hertz, which would end up being your crown chakra. So, I would tell them, go out in your day and find something purple. And so they'd come back and they'd be like, "Oh, I found, grapes that are purple, and I found, things in nature that are purple, or I found somebody wearing, a purple shirt." They are much more receptive to understanding because they're really just looking on how to make sense of their reality. When you get to adults, you get to the place where they've already kind of set in stone, this is the way
Yeah.
that it's going to be. And so it's kind of like chiseling, against rock. Whereas kids, it's very much like interacting with water.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm
But,
glad I'm glad you clarified that.
but what if you work with adults who are spiritually awakened and who are very intuitive?
So I think that definitely applies in both ways. So you can definitely run into an adult who is very set in their ways as well. There are a lot of people who preach some very like negative things, regardless of the fact that they're aware and spiritual, right? There's a lot of things that are going on just in the United States right now,
Yeah.
where you see a lot of the spiritual community still very negative towards the way that things are going. Whereas the real power is in compassion. You want to change the world, be compassionate. You will just be blown away at how much that changes things. So to give you an example, I had somebody who had asked me, what if you had a gun to your head? You don't believe in being violent or anything like that. And I was like, no, if I have a gun to my head, what I am going to ask for is I'm going to ask for the person's name or something personal about them from the field. Because I guarantee you, if someone has a gun to your head and you say their kid's name, they're not pulling that trigger. They're going to be like, how did you know that? So knowledge is extremely powerful. And, you can look at the Bible and see how Solomon was able to use that wisdom, even in stories like, for instance, with the two women and
Yeah.
who were claiming that the baby was theirs. So knowledge is exceptionally powerful. You don't have to go to the negative side to find this information, but that also doesn't mean that it's all about positivity. I very much teach the understanding that it is about that balance and holding that balance that gets you from one side of the slope to the other.
So, Devin, can you tell us about your course and what you like? How many weeks, how many days, and how for like is it an hour long? And what
So
the
I actually don't have a set schedule like that. I teach random classes all throughout the year. So I'm going to be teaching basically a course on grief that's going to be coming up at the end of September. So if you're on the Patreon or on the Facebook, I constantly let you guys know classes are coming up. People can sign up. Usually they're anywhere between, $36. Again, everything is a nine for me. So, so yeah, I just let people know, and then I open a Zoom and I basically teach. I have slideshows, all different things that I go through to really kind of help people understand. I have a sigil class that's coming up in October because of the fact of course, October, everybody loves, the Halloween and all those different things. So I teach people how to make their own sigils using Vortex math. So I don't really have like a set schedule in that way, but if you were on the Facebook or if you were on the Patreon, you are up to date. And in fact, if you're on the Patreon, you are auto enrolled in all my classes. So that's one of the reasons why people sign up for the Inner Ripple, which is the $18, is because it just auto enrolls you. I let you know when a class comes, and then people just join.
You mean Patreon membership?
Yes. Yeah. So I have a $1 one that's the Matrix Mysteries, and then I have an $18 one that is more towards the stuff that we're talking about.
Wow.
Okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I told you you would like
Yeah.
his
Well, I hope that down the road we can get you and Jimmy on,
Jimmy.
I would
because
love to.
that would just be
Absolutely.
fascinating, because I think you're on the same track of this high speed information that's come in, and you're getting it from different sources, but it's all going to the same sort of thing. I think you'd be very interested to see the mathematics he's come up with, and it's all the same sort of stuff you're talking about, but his is all linked to just this weird message and stars and stuff like that. So it'll be really interesting, and I want to thank you for taking time, because now you sound like you're a very busy guy that you're taking an hour out. So I'm very pleased, and anything I can do to push your message, I certainly will, because you're one of the guys that's on the right track, and I think people can actually learn a lot from you.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed this. I would love to meet him.
Yeah.
Not very often do I talk to people who can really understand, like when I get into the Pythagorean, 3, 4, 5 triangle and how it correlates to Fibonacci. So I would really enjoy that.
Wow. Okay. I'll send the video over to him tonight, and we'll get him to talk to you. Oh,
Fantastic.
So Devon, the 137-649-862-350, how do you apply that into your daily life?
So if you actually end up adding up those numbers, you
It's
end
all
up with
nine.
30, but you end up with 30 at the top and you end up with 24 at the bottom. So 3 and 6. And of course, it all aligns with the 9. So when you're looking at a triangle, what you really want to do is you want to understand that 3 and 6 are the balancing bottom part of a triangle, and the top is going to be 9. So when you're living your life, let's say you're living at a 3, then if you look at 9, it's too far for you to be able to go that direction. So you go towards the 6, you move 3 steps towards that 6. And then once you're at a 6, you realize you just need 3 more to get to a 9. So these are just ways that you can actually apply this information into your life. But those numbers specifically correlate to the message in Revelations 21:6, which again is a 9, right? 2 plus 1 plus 6 is 9, where it says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And it talks about how it is going to give knowledge, or basically the wisdom in the water. And so those were the first numbers that I had received. And then from there, just started learning all about 3, 6, and 9s, and then writing everything I had received in that moment.
wow.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So I'm sure you offer personal sessions, and what's the cost? I think it was 144.
No, it's actually 108, which
Oh,
again is a
108.
9.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's 108. It's for an hour session. I meet with all different students, whether it be health, if they want to do core chakra memory work, if they want to just dive into all of this information that we just discussed. I let people know that the more sessions that you get, the cheaper it gets, because my ultimate goal is the more committed you are, the more excited I am to work with you. So it just ends up getting cheaper from that point.
I see. Okay, great. Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this has
Been
been an
wonderful.
amazing interview.
Awesome. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
You're welcome. I'm gonna stop recording so that wait, are you recording or was I? No, I